I'm going to make you a very bold promise right now. I'm going to promise you that if you watch this video all the way until the end and you take notes and do the things I tell you to do in this video, your sales are going to double in the next 30 days. How can I promise that? I have been coaching and training salespeople for close to 20 years now, and in that time, almost every salesperson I've ever trained is making one of the 7 mistakes I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to start by telling you the number one mistake people make. The number one mistake is their mindset is in the wrong place. This could manifest in a multitude of different ways. Let me explain. If you got a crappy attitude about the way your work environment is, you're not going to sell well. If you don't like your scripts and you're constantly resisting your scripts, you're not going to sell well. If you don't like your product or your service, you're not going to sell. All of the things that are happening in your mind are going to be projected out in the way that you speak. Everything that you think manifests itself in the way that you talk. I want you to think about that and think about what your clients hear when they hear you talking. Do they hear a happy-go-lucky, excited salesperson? Do they hear someone who's so excited to go out there and do the job that they were asked to do? Do they hear somebody who's so excited about their product that they just feel compelled to buy from them? Or do they hear you having a miserable day? What do they hear? Do they hear you fighting your script? Do they hear you doubting yourself? Do they hear you beating yourself up going, oh man, maybe I should find a different job? What did they hear? You got to look deeply into what's going on in your mind. If what's going on in your mind is incongruent, or in other words, it's not the same as the results that you want, then you've got to change what's going on in your mind. There's a bunch of different things that you can do to do that, and I'm not going to talk a lot about that in this video. I'll just mention a couple of things. Start reading books that make you feel positive. If you're not a reader, listen to books. If you don't like to read or listen, watch positive YouTube videos. There's so much good stuff out there. You need to program your mind to accept the good so you can project that to your clients. Oftentimes, we're so beat up upstairs, we are so tired, exhausted, burnt out, and there's so much garbage going on up here that we can't give people the inspiration they need to buy. We can't give them the energy that they need to feel good about us. Instead, it's so repelling. It's so stinky and gross. People hear you and they're like, ugh, what is that? They hear the desperation. They hear the frustration. They hear all of the negativity that's just building up here. So I want to ask you this. Is that going on in your sales business? Is that going on in your life? I promise you this, the minute you clear that out, that alone is going to take your sales to a new level. Mistake number 2, the way people introduce themselves and the way they try and build rapport. Now, I've been in sales for a very long time, and I've been taught all of the things that all the other gurus have taught, that you got to have something in common, you got to build trust, I get a little frustrated with this too, because most people are not understanding what rapport really is. Rapport is like this deep level of trust that you have with someone for no reason. There's just something about them that makes you feel good about them. I'll bet you all of you could think of a time right now where you met somebody and for some reason, something about them just felt good. You don't know what it was. That's kind of what rapport is. Rapport is the ability to turn that on at will. And most people are not doing that. What most people are doing is they're trying to get people to like you. I mean, think about this for a second. How many of you know that person that's just begging for your attention and begging for your approval? And what does that make you do? Do you feel so excited to be around this person who's begging for your attention? Do you feel so excited to have that person follow you around like a lost puppy dog? Hey, how's it going? Is everything okay? Is that the vibe that you want to give to people? Or do you want to give a vibe to people that you're knowledgeable, you know what you're talking about, and you have their best interest in mind? All of this starts from the way you introduce yourself. Most people are not introducing themselves in a way that's attractive. They do a long introduction saying who they are, what company they work for, exactly why they're calling, and they do that in the first 2 or 3 seconds. Why do you think so many people reject you? How many people are waiting for that phone call or waiting for that text or waiting for that email or waiting for the person to come and knock on their door or whatever it is? How many people are waiting for that person to sell them something? They're not. Here's what most people are waiting for: real human connection. Most people are waiting to connect with somebody. Most people would love to feel safe with someone. They would love to feel good. They would love to feel a level of communication with somebody that's deeper and richer than what they're experiencing from other strangers. Remember when you were a kid and your parents told you, don't talk to strangers, and now you're in sales and what do you do for a living? Right? Well, all the people you're speaking to, they were also told, don't talk to strangers. And for some reason, when we introduce ourselves, we are proving to them that we're a stranger. Why would you do that? There are certain techniques that you can use that are going to get you into rapport. Some of them are matching the way the person says hello. I will bet you most people are not doing that right now. It's saying their name and waiting for the person to engage. It's repeating and approving the answers they give you when you speak to them. It's recognizing their speech patterns. It's recognizing the way they talk and matching them as best as you can. Doing those simple things make a big difference. I want you to think of just aligning yourself with someone, making somebody just feel so good because you're on their side. That is what you're trying to do as a salesperson. And it's not necessarily because you want to sell them. It's just because there needs to be a deeper desire in you to have a real connection with someone. That alone, just that intention of just, I want to connect deeply with people, is going to change the way they see you forever. But that leads to mistake number 3. In a lot of cases, when you do connect with someone and you do have deep rapport with someone, you just want to sell them. And in a lot of cases, people are not qualified. Mistake number 3, trying to sell to people who are not qualified. I've been in sales for a very long time. I've had the sales managers who say, yeah, everybody's sellable. I've seen gurus say this on podcasts. I've seen gurus say this on stage. They say, yeah, everybody's a buyer. No, they are not. They're not. Unless you have infinite products and infinite services, nobody is always a buyer. Nobody. There are certain people who meet the criteria for your product or service. Here's an example. Let's pretend I was selling coaching, and I was selling coaching and training to somebody. I would want to make sure, A, they're in the field that I know. I mean, if they're not even in the field that I know, why would I sell them coaching? I'd want to make sure that they can afford the coaching that I sell. C, I want to make sure that whatever challenges they have are things that I can solve for them. And D, I want to make sure that they're motivated enough, that they actually want to change. They want to take some form of action. If those things are missing, or any of those things are missing, I can't sell them anything. So many times I see people chasing down leads who are not going to buy ever. They're not going to buy your service. And yet these salespeople are just chasing them and chasing them and chasing them and chasing them. I mean, think of the image of the hamster on the wheel. Is that how you want to live your sales career? I want you to think about this for a second, because this was one of the mistakes that really, really destroyed my sales in the beginning. In the very beginning, I was always trying to get somebody or convince somebody to be ready. You are never, let me be clear about this. You are never, ever going to get someone to be ready. You're never going to. They are either ready before you showed up, or they're not. One of the major things about sales that nobody really talks about is you're not trying to convince someone to be ready. They must already be ready before you show up. And then when you show up, you are presenting why your product or service is the answer to their problem, so that you are really the solution. In other words, if they're already considering it, they're looking at more than just you. They're probably looking at a bunch of competitors. And the question you got to ask yourself is, if they're looking at the other competitors, what is so compelling about me that will cause this person to take action? That's the way you got to look at it. You got to stop looking at it like, I got to convince everybody. I got to sell everybody. There's something I can do for them. I appreciate that you want to do that. And at the same time, if they are not qualified to buy your product or service, you cannot sell them. Out of all the industries that I've worked with, probably mortgages is one of the only ones that really understands this. The mortgage industry, they just have such strict guidelines on who they can lend money to. And still, there's always still some LOs, and there's still some people in that world who try and like Frankenstein a deal together. A lot of times it leads to frustration, it leads to unhappy clients. Don't try and put people into a product or service that isn't going to work for them. Make sure you have the right client before you proceed. The fourth mistake people make, this is a big one, is people are selling what their features of their product are. In other words, all the cool stuff you get. Everybody has gone to a landing page, or they've gone through like a sales presentation. You have this checklist of all these things that you get, all of these features. You get this AI tool, you get this marketing tool, you get this, and you get all these tools. The tools are not what's going to compel somebody to buy. The truth is, they don't care about the tools. They care if the tools solve their problem. There's a big difference between the tools and the results. People will buy the results. If you're sitting there trying to convince somebody to buy some cool tool, some really cool AI thing, or some really cool web page, or some really cool landing page, or some really cool marketing funnel, you're not addressing the issue. The client that you are speaking to wants to know, does this solve my problem? And if your product or service solves their problem, they are going to buy. You, in your presentation, have to make it clear. Your product, your service solves their problem. Now, how do we know what the problem is? That's why we pre-qualify. We pre-qualify to find out, do they have a problem that I can fix? And then once you present to them the benefits of working with you, they see clearly, this fixes my problem. When you present whatever product or service you sell, the client should feel relieved. They should feel really good and like, oh, finally, exactly what I've been looking for. That feeling is what's going to cause them to buy. Now, if you're just listing off all the features and blah, 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 it comes with blah, 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 you're not getting anybody to buy. You're giving them information. Information isn't bad, but it doesn't compel people to buy. Information gets people to think. How many times have you heard the objection? Let me think about it. That's what happens when you give information, not results. Always sell the results. That's what people are trying to buy. Now, that leads to mistake number 5. Let's say you've done everything so far. Your mindset's in the right place. You've built rapport with them and you've connected deeply. You've qualified. You've found out exactly what they need. You're presenting the benefits. Now, you actually have to ask them to buy. This is called closing. Now, notice how far I got into this. One of the big mistakes with closing is people hear a little bit of interest and like, all right, let's do this. Let's buy it right now. You don't want to do that. I've seen this a lot with real estate agents. They call someone that's like an expired listing, and that expired listing says hello, and they go, hey, if you listed your house with me, they're already going for the listing, and they haven't even been talking to the person for 2 minutes yet. Why would that person make that assumption off of less than a 2-minute phone call? Now, this happens in every sale. Think about a time now where you heard someone was a little bit interested, and boom, you jump the gun, and you're trying to close them and trying to get them to buy. This alone costs a ton of people sales. Now, I know that we've heard always be closing. That is so stupid. You close when the client is ready to be closed. You ask for the order once the client is ready. How do we know the client is ready? You've heard it. You've heard them, this is what I've been looking for. That's when you close. A close shouldn't be this high pressure, high stress situation where what do you think? Do you want to approve the agreement? Let's be clear. How many times have you done something like that where it's time to close and you get that lump in your throat, you start sweating profusely, and you look like a nervous wreck in front of the client. Or even worse, you're on the phone and your headset starts dripping with sweat because you're so nervous to close. How many times has that happened? Closing should never feel like that. Closing should be easy. It should be effortless. It should just be natural. And it is natural if you've been following all the other steps. So if I start my introduction, I start closing right away, all I'm going to do is make the client angry. I'm going to make them reject me. You don't want them to reject you. You want them to listen. You want them to cooperate. So maybe build a little rapport first. Maybe find out, does this person fit what I can do? Maybe present the benefits first. I don't know. Tell me if I'm crazy here. Tell me if I'm so crazy to think that maybe we want to find out if they even want what we have to sell before we try and cram it down their throat. Folks, I'm not trying to say that closing is important. I'm saying it is important. And what I'm saying is it must be timed correctly. Oftentimes we're closing too early, or we get too scared and we just chicken out. When it's time to close, that's usually a sign that you're not confident. That's usually a sign that you're not confident in the presentation. You didn't get that reading off of them that makes you feel like, all right, they're ready. Oftentimes that's because, this goes back to mindset. It's because up here, you're second guessing yourself too much. Up here, you're stuttering, you're stopping yourself, you're holding yourself back. You're so worried about what's going on with you that you can't really focus on the client. Again, that goes back to the mindset thing. Now, let's say that you do close. Common thing that happens is you get an objection. Not an objection, right? Objections are fine. Objections mean, yes, if you can answer this question for me. That's really what it means. An objection isn't a no. No is a no. So if you ask someone to buy, they go, no. That is a no. An objection is, I want to, but, and then whatever their excuse is. And a lot of times it's not because you didn't do a good job. You may have done an excellent job, and it's just coming at them really fast. I mean, think about it for a second. One of the things I used to sell is I used to sell coaching and training. And when I was selling coaching, I'd say hello to somebody, and 15 minutes later, I'm asking them to commit to a 1-year contract for $1,000 a month. I went from, hi, I don't know who you are, to give me your credit card for $1,000 a month in 15 minutes. And I got good enough that I could do the one-call closes on that. And the reason why is because I started to understand, listen, just because they're hesitating right now, it doesn't mean no. It just means, hey, I'm a little uncomfortable right now. So let's figure it out. What's making them uncomfortable? Is it the cost? Is it the commitment? Do they really need to talk to somebody first? Oftentimes that's an excuse. Handling an objection is not something that should beat you up here. Again, this comes back to mindset. That's why this is number one. Handling an objection is simply just understanding what their concerns are and telling them or helping them understand that it shouldn't really be that big of a concern. For example, when somebody says, I need to think about it, they're not saying, I'm a no. When they say I need to think about it, what they're saying is something that you said is compelling, and I'm a little scared to pull the trigger right now. So find out what's making them scared. Find out what's making them nervous. Then solve whatever it is that they have any consternation with. Solve whatever it is that they have any hesitation towards. If they're like, the price is such a big deal. All right, let's talk about the price. Address it head on. Now, once you've handled objections, you obviously have to close again. So now we've gone through 6 steps. Step number 7. There are people who, no matter how many objections you handle, they're not going to convert the first time you talk to them. Big shocker there, right? So one of the all-time biggest failures in salespeople is the inability to follow up. You've got to follow up. And I don't mean follow up like in a salesy, high-pressure way. I mean follow up with the intent to help the person solve the problem they told you they were concerned with. So this comes back. This is another mindset thing. There's usually when people are not following up, it's because they don't want to bother someone. When they're not following up, it's because they don't feel good about chasing someone. That's not what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to follow up because they said they need help with blank and you have the solution. And if you have the solution, why wouldn't you follow up? Isn't that just what good service is? Isn't good service just following up and trying to help people take that leap of faith? Isn't that what follow-up is? Oftentimes we get in our head and we stop ourselves from doing it. Or worse, we're so desperate for the sale that we don't just follow up, we chase. And we're like a rabid dog chasing. That's the last thing you want to do. You don't want to be either of those. What you want to do is follow up with the people who said that this is the service that they want just to help them get over the finish line. You don't have to be pushy. You don't have to be chasey. And at some point, the truth is with follow-up, it's a numbers game. So a bunch of the people that you're following up with are not going to convert. Why? All right, we gave them too much time to think about it, or they talked themselves out of it, or maybe they're just not really motivated enough yet to do something. All of that is okay. You just have to be detached from the outcome. As long as you're constantly filling your pipeline, you're always going to have plenty of follow-ups. So what I've just shared with you are the 7 biggest mistakes that salespeople make. And like I said, that's my challenge to you. I want you to go through all 7 of these steps and find out which ones are you having issues with. Here's how you can tell. If mindset is the issue, that means you don't feel good when you're doing your job. That's a mindset issue. If it is an introduction or rapport issue, here's how you can tell. Every time you try and talk, you don't feel good. That doesn't feel like there's a connection happening. They don't want to talk to you. They're resisting you. They're not being clear with you. They're giving you short answers. They're not telling you everything. That means you've got a rapport issue. If you are constantly presenting and following up with people who have no intention of buying, you have a qualifying issue. That means that somebody they're in rapport with you and they're talking with you, but they're not your person. You're talking to leads that are never going to buy. Now, if it's a presentation issue, these are people who are ready to buy, but they went with a competitor. The reason why they went with a competitor is that competitor made them feel like they solved the problem better than you do. Now, if you have a problem closing, you're going to know what that feels like. If you have a problem closing, it means you're jumping the gun too fast and they're going, nope, and they're leaving. Or it means you get to the end, you get nervous, you choke up a little bit, you don't say a good close, you kind of hint and beat around the bush. That means you got a closing issue. Now, if you get all the way that far and then you get to an objection, you're just like, okay, well, I guess I'll follow up you later, and you don't handle any of their objections, then you have an objection handling issue. Now, if you go through all that and you've closed a whole bunch of times, you've handled a bunch of objections, we're not going anywhere, then none of your follow-ups are converting, then your follow-up process has issues with it. Or if you're just not following up at all and you're just expecting people to call you back because I guess you're that cool of a guy, if that's what you're feeling, well, then that's stopping you. Now, I want you to go through this entire last week of sales. I want you to go through all the people you spoke to. I want you to go through all the people that you thought you had a good conversation with. I want you to compare it to this list of 7 things, and then you tell me, did you have an issue with one of those things? I guarantee you got an issue with one of these 7 things, and that's why your sales aren't growing. If you do these 7 things, I promise you, your sales are going to double, maybe even triple in the next 30 days. Now, if you like this content, like, subscribe, join up. I'm going to be talking about this kind of stuff often. I have so many thoughts about sales. I have so much to contribute to it. I want to give it all out because I know it's going to make a new generation of great salespeople. I hope to see you on the next video.